Hey guys, Scripture here with another video, and this isn't just going to be about the whole bad mother part of it. That's a big aspect of it. I was actually kind of shocked when I read this, and I don't know if the people writing these comic books and stuff for Lucasfilm understand normal family function. Because I always saw Leia as like the sort of the most sort of logical, maybe is the way to put it, right? Very logical, very sound, until of course Disney took over Star Wars, and then she just became illogical and dumb. But going through this whole process of understanding how they tried to fill in the story of Ben Solo, like his life, that's what this video is essentially about. And through that process, I noticed so many problems, inconsistencies, convoluted things. So I felt like I should make a video about it. You know, everyone's talking about this stupid Ben Solo thing, Hunt for Ben Solo thing. And so I wanted to do a video about it because it's kind of strange that they decided to do things the way they did, even from the beginning, but then what they've added here, thinking that it's helping the situation, it actually makes it worse, because it has a whole bunch of holes in it, and it doesn't make sense. So anyway, so let's get into this. Okay, first of all, it's super important to understand the environment that Ben Solo, as far as they're concerned, was living in, right? So he's supposedly hearing all these voices, right? They say he's hearing, well, supposedly, I guess he's hearing all these voices, and he's being manipulated by the dark side from Snoke or from Palpatine, which, by the way, has really, really major implications about sort of how that relates to what happened with Anakin. But the big thing here is, so Ben Solo had a good environment. He had a good environment that he was living in. He had a whole bunch of people that were around him that were very positive in his life. But then they kind of flipped it, and it just doesn't make any sense. Wookiee first mate Chewbacca. Organa was with Solo for multiple milestones. So Leia was with Ben for multiple milestones. When he took his first steps, when he said his first word, and when he first instinctively harnessed the power of the Force to telekinetically throw a toy across the room in anger. As a toddler, Solo continued to demonstrate his ability to use the Force without either anger or training to bring objects to himself. So it's not as if he was in a dark place. He was using the Force without anger all the time, and he was, bring the ball to me so I can play with the ball, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so Solo grew close to his parents' friends in his childhood. In particular, he showed great affection towards Lando Calrissian, whom he referred to as Unca Wando, and then Uncle Lando when he was older, and who told him stories of Han's days as a smuggler. Chewbacca, whom Solo referred to as Uncle Chewie, mentored him as he learned how to fly a speeder and fire a blaster, and he sometimes provided childcare when the boys' parents were occupied with their respective careers. Okay, that's important to know, okay, because they're going to talk about stuff later here in his upbringing where that's a big factor, but then you're like, but why would that cause a problem? Okay, so Chewie was like his babysitter, I guess, essentially, right? He's always hanging around, and so he had this really good, deep relationship with Chewie, which in the concept art for, I think it was Trevorrow's Rise of Skywalker, he has a confrontation with Chewie. Chewie's chained up, and he's in the room with him. The fact that they didn't even think to do that, but then had this as like a background of his is kind of silly. Like when Chewbacca gets captured, there should have been a scene with him and Ben Solo, 100%. That would have been so good at just fleshing out his childhood and his changes, but they just didn't do that because they didn't do anything correctly. It was all horrible. Okay, so Solo heard many stories about the time of the Galactic Civil War from his family. His father told him about the time he was frozen in carbonite while being held a prisoner of the Hutt gangster Jabba, and he learned about challenges that the Rebel Alliance faced in the aftermath of Hoth from his mother, and Calrissian told Solo about the Syndicate War as well as Scourge Crisis. So he knew all this stuff. Solo was surprised that all those events occurred in 1 year. He would also come to know that Luke Skywalker confronted Darth Vader on more than one occasion. By the time of his Jedi apprenticeship, Solo knew that Vader and Emperor Palpatine were both Sith. He had been told the Emperor died on the second Death Star. And what's interesting about this is he was told all of this stuff as a boy, okay? And he begins his training at 9 years old, according to this Wikipedia article, okay? But it's not that he was told all this stuff. That's great. It's the thing that they omitted that was so weird and didn't make sense. And we'll see why here in a minute. So then it says his parents' increasing reliance upon a droid caretaker and their busy lives contributed to Solo developing a sense of loneliness. Although his parents Although he was told his parents were away doing important work, a benefit his mother hoped he would realize and appreciate in time, the child had difficulty accepting and believing it. Okay, so there are panels. This one in particular doesn't look like he's having many struggles, but I'm not going to go through and try and find every single panel, but doesn't Chewie factor in there, though? And Lando, Uncle Wando? Like, he has all these people surrounding him. Luke is there when he's born. I don't understand why he would feel lonely. I mean, I can understand him feeling a longing for his parents, but this whole thing is like how they're trying to explain why he eventually goes dark. Because, oh, well, they weren't around. They were busy working. She was a senator, and Han was doing whatever he was doing. I think it says it later in this article. Oh, so there you go. Bad parents. See, that's the bad parents that started the ball rolling. And it's like, dude, like, come on. Like, that's such a crappy way of going about this. The other thing that's weird about it is they actually do show some stuff where it's pretty neat. You know, Han takes him out on the Falcon and shows him some stuff and shows him how to go into hyperdrive and lets him pull the lever. And so on the one hand, they're saying they were neglectful. On the other hand, they're showing stuff where they're actually, you know, good. And so you're kind of just, it's a little convoluted. And again, I don't know why this would be an issue because he's got Chewie and Lando and Luke and all these people around him. And it doesn't seem like a negative environment in these frames. So you can say that this is sort of what started the ball rolling if you want to, but you didn't present it very well because the environment looks very, very healthy for a kid to grow up in. Okay, so growing up, Solo was unaware of his Sith heritage as the grandson of Darth Vader. Only his parents and uncle, Jedi Master Luke Skywalker, knew the truth of Anakin Skywalker's past. Organa decided to delay telling Solo the truth about Vader until he was older and her brother could explain how had returned to the light side as Anakin Skywalker, how he had. However, Solo perceived that his family was keeping something from him. So here's it again. So they're neglecting him, right? They're off at work too much. And it just feels like whoever wrote this, that's what happened to them when they were a kid. Like their parents worked too much and they didn't like that or something. But anyways, I don't get that. I don't know why they would feel like they'd have to do that. But anyways, so then the second level is, oh, now he feels like my family's keeping something from me. And the thing that's crazy about this is it says that Leia decided to delay telling him until he was older. But when you find out how old he is, you're just like, even that doesn't jive. And we'll see why. Beyond Snoke's influence, Organa recognized similarities between her son and her father. Therefore, she counted on her brother to train Solo and prevent him from following his grandfather down the path of the dark side. It was because of Solo's heritage of Anakin Skywalker's grandson, Snoke saw a focal point within the boy, believing he had the right balance of both light and dark, and desired to claim him as his own apprentice. So right away, they're presenting Leia as like she's viewing her son as problematic, or that he has a problematic side to him. Like they're already just that's their focus is, oh, he's gonna become bad. And so you're already you're going at the raising of your kid from a defeatist standpoint. You shouldn't be worrying about that. Like, I'm a parent, okay? Like the idea that you would just be like, oh well, they're just gonna be bad, like you realize it's a possibility. You want to make sure you don't have them in situations that tempt them to go do bad things, but it's not like you just assume that that's going to be the case. So that's kind of the wrong attitude. So what happened with the Organas? Like, what was happening with Bail and Leia's adopted mother? Like, they seem to raise her in this way that she feels like it's okay to just spend all my time at work, but then be super worried about my son going dark, but then withholding information about who his grandfather is. Why would she have those thoughts? Or why would she raise him that way? So are we saying that she was raised kind of sloppily by her adopted parents then? Because typically that's the reflection of how you would raise your kids, at least to some degree. In 15 ABY, prior to his 10th birthday, Solo decided he would begin his Jedi training and join Skywalker's initiative to restore the Jedi Order. It was apparent to Skywalker that his nephew was inherently powerful with the Force despite his lack of training in the Jedi arts. Solo learned the ways of the Jedi in its many forms under the tutelage of Skywalker, who impressed on his people the importance of practicing discipline and control. Solo gave his best efforts to gain his master's approval, although at times Their familial bond caused him to address Skywalker as his uncle instead of master. Skywalker had committed his life to reestablishing the Jedi Order's teachings, which had virtually nothing to do with family ties. Therefore, he taught Solo that detachment and distance were necessary to gaining the pure focus that every Jedi aspired to achieve. So he did actually go down the dumb road of not allowing your family members to be involved in your life, or dissuading that. That's wrong. He learned that you can have attachments. You just have to... It's not about attaching. It's about, I love them more than myself. I will allow myself to be sacrificed for them. That's the issue, not you can't have them. I'm surprised they didn't go down that road, and that should have been the big change, right? In how the new Jedi Order was gonna move forward, was that actually, no, it's through love. I love people more than me, so I'm willing to sacrifice for others. Not, oh, I can't be involved with you, and I can't love you or have emotions over you. I got to be this way. It's like, what? Solo and Skywalker traveled across the galaxy to search for lost lore of the Force, accumulating artifacts and learning more about the Jedi Order's ancient history in the hope of fully restoring it. Through his training, Solo developed a sense of devotion to the ways of the Jedi. He endeavored to gain greater knowledge of the Force and ways of the Jedi Order, desired to prove himself worthy of inheriting the mantle of the Jedi Knight, and learned a great deal of the teachings about the light side of the Force. Okay, fair enough. As the grandson of the Chosen One and nephew of the Last Jedi, Solo felt immense pressure to live up to the Skywalker family legacy, a burden that weighed heavily upon him and ultimately fueled his insecurities. Under Skywalker, Solo learned much, leading the young Jedi to acknowledge and idolize his uncle for the knowledge of the Force and power he possessed, considering him a legend. However, Solo had misgivings about Skywalker's teaching methods, feeling as though, that despite of all he learned, he was never able to utilize it, and he privately disagreed with his mentor's decision to store and lock away the Jedi knowledge they uncovered within the new Jedi Temple. Okay, well, that's just like normal, like, kid angst. Like, why are you holding me back? Why don't you just let me know stuff? That's normal. Now, going back to Leia withholding the Vader stuff to him, okay, fine, but again, you're going to see where that goes and how it is very, very nonsensical. As a Padawan, Solo constructed his own blue-bladed lightsaber and became skilled with its use. He would also keep his calligraphy set, blah, 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 blah. Okay, Solo was taught by Skywalker to also exercise a level of restraint when he grew more powerful within the Force, a way his uncle attempted to manage his progress in Jedi training. Skywalker placed his hope for the future in the Jedi in Solo, convinced for a time that he would not die the last of the Jedi Knights. At one point, Solo believed in his own destiny as a Jedi, with Skywalker encouraging his belief and resolve. Solo and Skywalker traveled the galaxy extensively, gathering the lost Jedi knowledge, including ancient Jedi text filled with arcane writings and holocrons filled with teachings from forgotten bygone eras of the Force. So he's spending an awful lot of time with Luke, and he's not with his parents. Okay, fair enough. But he's still spending a lot of time with Luke, his uncle. It's not like he's with Joe Blow. And if he wasn't with Luke, he'd be with Chewie, and if he wasn't with Chewie, he'd be with Lando, and, like, it's a little bit silly that all of this, what I'm reading here, is somehow going to turn him into this guy that's evil. It just seems really stupid. But there's the real stupid stuff coming. Solo digressed about the length of their journey, traveling to the edge between the known galaxy and the unexplored space. He believed that his master would only collect what they found, but never use any of it, to which Snoke stated that the Jedi had a history of hoarding knowledge, believing themselves to be masters of the Force. As Solo's unrest grew. So basically, Luke was in collector mode, and he wasn't using it yet, and Snoke was telling Ben that, oh, see, they're bad. They hoard knowledge. Like, wouldn't at some point he be like, hey, Uncle Luke, like, if this was an issue to him, right? Like, if this was a big deal to him, that, hey, why aren't we reading these books or doing anything with them? Wouldn't he be like, hey, Uncle Luke, can we do stuff with that? And then wouldn't Luke give him a reasonable explanation as to why he's not ready for it yet or something like that? Like, wouldn't he be able to do that? Instead of just, no, we're not, like, wouldn't that have been a thing? Though he expressed admiration for his uncle as a teacher, Solo confided in Snoke his belief that Skywalker was holding him back in his evolution as a Jedi. Why would he do that, though? So he's literally having, like, conversations with Snoke while he's a Padawan with Luke. How is that even a thing? Snoke told Solo that his master only saw him as a child, but in time he would become aware of his apprentice's true potential. Their private conversation. They were having conversations. So it was bad enough that it was like, I'm putting voices in his head from across the galaxy, but no, they were literally talking. And there's implications to this. This is insane. So anyway, the private conversation was interrupted by Skywalker and San Tekka as they drew closer to El Frono. Skywalker talked about how they not only had a chance to gain new insights into the ancient Jedi, but also how the mission could give Solo an opportunity to indulge his fascination with ancient weapons, knowing that his pupil was particularly interested in them. Solo smiled when his master expressed how pleased he was to have his apprentice by his side, and told Skywalker he felt the same. So, they had a good relationship, it sounds like. Pretty good, right? Open and talking about their things. So why wouldn't Ben say, hey, there's this voice in my head telling me this stuff? Why wouldn't he tell him that? It just doesn't make any sense. Like, it doesn't make sense that you would just trust this voice in your head over your uncle who's literally standing in front of your face and you've grown up with, and you have all these people around you that love you. You see what I'm saying? It just doesn't jive. The other implication of this that's so silly is, if Palpatine, because I guess technically it wasn't really Snoke, it might have been, but it was Palpatine, because he says, I was every voice in your head, sounding like Snoke, I guess. Why wouldn't he have just done that with Anakin? There's no lore that I know of, correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, because I've never heard of this, where Palpatine was putting voices in young Anakin's head. He would talk to him directly, but I don't know anything about any of that going on. And if it was that easy, you could just sit on your throne in Exegol and just turn people to the dark side. Like, you could just... Even if they have a Jedi Master around them, a really great family, a loving environment, people that care about them, other Padawan learners that are their friends, which they talk about in the comic books, even if you have the absolute most perfect environment, these guys can somehow get you to believe nonsense from across the galaxy sitting on their armchair watching the football game? Really? That sounds so stupid. Like and it takes away from Palpatine, because the whole thing with Palpatine was how he manipulated him. Not just, I'm on the throne just saying stuff to this guy. It's, no, I have to have access to him, I have to bring him around, I have to put him under my wing, I have to convince him that he's more important than the Jedi think he is, get him to resent them. He had to go through a process with Anakin. He couldn't just sit and say stuff from across the galaxy. At least he put effort in. This is like lazy Sith. This is like, I'm only going to do the bare minimum effort, and it's still going to work because reasons. Okay, so a group of marauders, this is the Knights of Ren, entered the outpost after the two Jedi and their explorer companion. A warrior calling himself Ren spoke on the group's behalf, declaring that the outpost and its contents were claimed by the Knights of Ren. Rejecting the Knights' claim, Skywalker drew his green-bladed lightsaber and introduced himself as the last Jedi, and therefore the heir to all that belonged to the Order. Solo also activated his lightsaber, but remained out of the ensuing fight as Skywalker instructed him to protect San Tekka. Does this sound like a Jedi to you? So if they're going to say, we're going to have Luke, keep his attachments thing, the Jedi attachment thing, which we all thought they were going to move on from based on his experience, his life experience. Okay, if they're going to do that and say, he's super committed, does it sound like or super committed to the old ways or whatever? Why would he ignite his lightsaber over an artifact? Like, the Jedi do that? They, kill people for, some artifact? I thought they only ignited their lightsabers in self-defense. Or in a situation, right, where they had to because they knew it was going to be a lightsaber duel and they weren't just going to stand there. Doesn't that seem weird? I really must have the artifact, therefore I'm going to slaughter all these people. That doesn't sound very Jedi to me. And again, they're making him, stick to the old ways, but then not in this instance. Because he's just super into stuff. I never got those vibes from Luke at all. I never got the vibes that he was really into, collecting crap or, having things. And then when he did get all the Jedi texts, he's on Octu and he doesn't even care about them. He basically says the Jedi's nonsense anyway, but then he has them all set up in the tree and all, his little collection, but he doesn't care about it because he hates the Jedi now and they're hubris and blah, blah, blah. It's none of this makes any sense. This isn't helping explain anything. This is just making everything worse. This whole thing so far is just making it worse. Ren conceded the battle after his knights were defeated by Skywalker. During the confrontation, however, he sensed that the dark side was strong in Solo. So he could sense that. This Ren guy, who they're a joke, right? In one of the comics, Palpatine just flicks them basically with lightning and kills half of them. And tells them they're just petty thieves and we're just going to do whatever. I'll find a use for you. But Luke couldn't sense the dark side in him. I kind of get that the Jedi couldn't sense the dark side in Palpatine because he's like a vet. Like he's been doing this for a really long time and he knows how to do it. And he knows how to manipulate it and he knows how to hide who he really is at a level that, probably is the greatest ever. But Ben Solo's a kid in this. Like, look at the panel. Like, he's like 10. So how would Luke not sense it? How would he not sense any of it? So now what we're saying that Palpatine's talking to him from across the galaxy from his armchair, but he's also blocking Luke across the galaxy from his armchair. So shouldn't he be able to block anything from across the galaxy that can go in someone's mind? With Cerebro, wouldn't he it'd be like Professor X with Cerebro. Like, just like, why did you bother going through all that trouble? You didn't need to. It's so convoluted, man. But either way, it makes no sense. Like, okay, so fine. Okay, he has to be the Chancellor. He has to physically be there to become the Emperor, fine. But then, why wasn't he manipulating Anakin just through his mind, like from far away? Why did he have to go through this whole big process? It doesn't really make any sense. When this is the big one, guys. This is where it's just like, really? So far, Han and Leia are crappy parents, and they don't spend enough time with their kid, even though the environment's really good, and he's with his uncle. But whatever, I guess when he was little, before he started training, they worked too much. That's just way too, like, close to home. Like, we want Galaxy Far, Far Away stories, not like whoever wrote that struggles when he was a kid, but whatever. So this is the big one. When the Skywalker's family's secret lineage was revealed in 28 ABY, Solo was 23 years old and still in the care of his uncle as he traversed the path towards becoming a Jedi Knight. Listen to this. Elsewhere in the galaxy, the truth about the parentage of Solo's mother was revealed by Organa's political enemies in the New Republic Senate. Organa had yet to tell her son about Darth Vader, and she worried about how he would react after finding out about it in such a public way. To honor his sister's wishes, Luke Skywalker had likewise avoided to provide Solo an honest account of Vader's redemption. Just as Organa expected upon becoming aware of the truth across the holonet, Solo was shocked. The revelation felt like a betrayal for him, and he crushed the image he had of Anakin Skywalker by realizing that his parents and uncle never shared the truth with him, despite knowing it for decades, leaving him to discover the Skywalker's family's most carefully guarded secret, along with the rest of the galaxy. So, you wanted to wait till he was older to tell him. The guy's 23, and you still haven't told him? He's a grown man. Like, okay, fine, you wanted to wait till he was a little bit older, but you still hadn't told him and he was 23? That doesn't make any sense. This is what they came up with? That it was just Leia just didn't tell him, like, into adulthood? That's the dumbest thing ever. He wasn't a kid. And actually, I would argue you're better to tell him when he's a kid, because then it's not something that he's going to have to deal with later. It's just, oh, I know that that's who he was, so that sucks, but I'm growing up with that knowledge, and by the time he's 23, it's like, oh, well, that's the way it is. But he's 23, and you still didn't tell him? So basically, Leia has to be an idiot for this plot with Kylo Ren to work, for him to reject the amazingly loving environment he had with all those people around him, with Lando, Chewie, all the other Padawans, his uncle, totally positive environment. The parents were neglectful to some degree, but generally very positive environment. So to explain that, Leia just doesn't tell him into literal, 5 years into adulthood, still hadn't told him, just so they could have this happen. That's literally the writing process they went through. So people have to be dumb for the plot to go through. It's the same with all Disney Star Wars. All my reviews of all the shows, it's like, at some point in every show, there has to be some dumb decisions, illogical stupidity for the plot to progress. Somebody has to be an idiot and defy, basic logic. It just doesn't make any sense that she wouldn't have just told him earlier than this. What an idiot. What was there was another character where they did this, where they had to withhold information from them. I can't remember who it was. And it was just for no reason. He's 23 and you still haven't told him? What are you worried about, dude? So you were just never going to tell him. Well, that's nice. Good parenting, Leia. Good job. And where was Han in all this? So she just makes the decision? That's it? Did he argue with her? He's his dad. Did he have a say? She just... Nope, we're just not going to tell him, okay, no, I'm his dad, and I think he needs to know. He's a grown man. You still haven't told him. I'm just going to go tell him now because this is stupid. So Han and Leia are horrible parents. Just like what we thought they were, right? In The Force Awakens, when they were so weird. They just, for absolutely no reason, went from like normal people to just really crappy parents so the plot could continue. Solo also believed that his family, by concealing his ancestry from him, justified the dark impulses that he suppressed throughout his young life. Organa sent a tearful and desperate message to her son soon after the news broke, but it was too late to prevent Solo's disillusionment from his family. So this is like, they did it to themselves. So his whole turning to the dark side is really stupid, guys. It's really stupid. It's like I said, armchair Palpatine, low effort Sith manipulation, and incompetence from everybody. From Luke, from Leia, from Han. Luke incompetence, not understanding what's going on and not, I guess, dealing with it. Nonsensicalness in the fact that Ben, as a kid, like a little kid, wouldn't tell his uncle that there was something in his head going on, somebody was speaking to him. He was having straight up conversations with him, and he never brought it up to anybody. That makes sense. All these loving people that care about you, you just don't say anything ever about anything. You just hold it in because you just hold it in just cuz. I mean, I can understand if they were like abusive and you wouldn't want to tell them what was going on in your mind. Like if they were horrible, if they you know, treated you like horribly and they were awful parents, sure, you're not going to trust them enough to tell them stuff, but that's not the case. They were stupid, but they weren't bad, and he was in a really good environment. You think he would tell somebody what was going on in his head? No, because people have to be dumb. Characters have to be dumb for plot to continue in Disney Star Wars. Ugh. Snoke saw Solo as a focal point between the light side and the dark side, an ideal embodiment of a Force warrior, and wanted to take him as an apprentice of his own, though his origins were a mystery even to his own subordinates. Snoke was created by the... blah, 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 we already know. Snoke utilized the anger Solo felt at his revelation to cap off his decade-long manipulations. Promising Solo with his guidance and the latter's power, he would become a figure that would even surpass his grandfather, Darth Vader. Okay, but even then, okay, so you're 23 years old, right? You're a 23-year-old person, and you're in this very loving environment, and then you find out that they haven't told you about your grandfather being a bad guy. You're a grown man, you'd probably be like, that's pretty crappy, and you'd probably be mad about it. But would you think to yourself, you know what, because they didn't tell me that, I'm totally going to become him now. I just want to go and kill a whole pile of people now because they didn't tell me that. Would that really be a normal thing for somebody to do? And would it be normal for them to be like, yeah, you know what, I want to be like Darth Vader because this voice in my head told me that, and because they withheld information from me? Really? Do you really think that that's a normal functioning thing somebody would do? Is that better put, in a storyline, is that believable? I don't think it is. That sounds very not believable to me. Well, you know what? I'm the grandson of Darth Vader. That means I gotta be evil now and kill millions of people. Yeah, that's what I gotta do. Like, what? And he knew everything else that happened. He just didn't know that. They didn't hold back any information. It was stupid for them to hold back information because, again, stupid to make plot go forward. But I just still don't see how you just go, well, throw my hands up, that's it. I could understand you maybe saying, you know what, Luke, you never told me, dude, and so I don't want to do this anymore. Or you say, you know what, I'm going to do my own thing. You guys, I don't really trust you anymore because you withheld this information. Okay, sure, you know, I still think that's kind of silly, but sure, that could be that could be at least tenable. To go from, they didn't tell me my grandfather was Darth Vader to I'm going to be a mass murderer just like Darth Vader now, that is a huge leap. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Solo felt like he no longer had to compete with his family or the Jedi who came before him anymore, but instead surpass them and live up to the power of his grandfather, feeding into Snoke's doctrine to turn the young man into a weapon of the dark side. Like, how crappy was Luke as a Jedi, as his uncle and Jedi Master, to where his whole thing was competing with his family or feeling like he was in competition with them? That's like the opposite of Luke. Luke didn't compete with Vader. He eventually said, forget it. I'm not even going to bother with this. Kill me if you want. I don't even care anymore. I just want you to be good. So none of this jives with the characters of the OT, and they're just, everything that Disney does wrecks the characters of the OT. We've talked about Palpatine, we've talked about Luke, Han, Leia, and like, it's the only way they can make Ben Solo's story work. And that's what I say to people, like, Rey was a horrible character in a Mary Sue. I get it. But the whole character of Ben Solo, the way that they wrote him and the way that they justified him doing what he did was to completely obliterate Luke, Han, and Leia as characters. That was the only way they could do it. They couldn't have Luke, Han, and Leia be good characters. You know, maybe they make some mistakes. Of course, everybody does. There's nothing wrong with that. And then he goes to the dark side. They are integral parts of making him go dark. And the way that they thought they would do that is by completely making them dumb, nonsensical, not caring, not explaining simple things to him that should have been explained very easily, not teaching him, like, again, compete with his family? Like, what the heck is that? That doesn't make any sense. And if that was the thing, like he felt like he was in competition with his family, then wouldn't it make sense to tell him about Vader a lot earlier? It's just, again, all of it. Ben Solo's actually, I think, worse than Rey in a lot of ways because, again, his whole character arc is predicated, the way they wrote it, on our favorite characters, the iconic characters of Star Wars, being destroyed to justify it. That's just disgusting. Unbeknownst to Solo, his descent to the dark side was part of Darth Sidious's plan to turn him against the new Jedi Order. The reborn Sith Lord had been using Snoke as a proxy to groom Solo for his future as Vader's heir, believing that his inner conflict made him an easily malleable but worthy apprentice. Although Solo would not become a true Sith, his raw strength of the Force made him powerful on the dark side. Here's the other thing, though. Why did he have so much inner conflict as a kid? That he could be manipulated by the dark side and by Palpatine or Snoke or whoever the heck was talking to him. Like with Anakin, you can kind of see why. Right? Like you can kind of see why he would be mad because his mother was abducted and killed by the Sand People, and why he would be resentful that the Jedi couldn't or wouldn't remove her from that equation with Watto. You could see how their doctrine would bug him, and that would start the ball rolling, right? Of him being like, wait a second, and then the trauma of his mother dying. But the idea that the trauma of your mother dying in your arms is the same as finding out your grandfather was a douche doesn't feel like it's the same worthiness, does it? Right? It's not. It's not the same. Speaking as someone whose grandfather, by the way, I found out as he was just about dead that he had a totally horrible secret life that nobody knew about when he was presenting himself as this benevolent man. It's not like I was like, oh, okay, I want to be like him now. Like, because I had a fairly good upbringing, normal people, had loving relationships with the people around me, like Ben Solo did. So, you guys tell me, like, does that seem to make sense? Does that make sense? Like I said, Anakin's trauma is so much different. And then Anakin knowing that, the love of his life was going to perish, those are real traumatic things. It feels like in the Disney sequels, like, it's the same way they try to say Rey went through some sort of trauma identity crisis thing. Why, though? Like, she didn't go through really anything. She knew how to do everything. She was surviving pretty good on Jakku. Yeah, it sucks. You're lonely and stuff. That's crappy. But that's not trauma like your mom literally dying in your arms. It's not even remotely close. So her supposedly going through something never really happened. And Ben too, it's like, no, you didn't really go through anything. You just heard some information that sucks. Yeah, it sucks. But you were in an environment where that information should not have impacted you at all in the way that it did. That's ridiculous. Following the revelation of his grandfather's identity as the Sith Lord Darth Vader, he became disillusioned with his family and the Jedi Order, both of which he renounced after. So they're saying that's the main reason, is because he found out about Darth Vader. And Leia had to be an idiot. Like, if she had told him when he was a kid, right? So he's 5 years old and he finds out his grandfather was a really bad guy. You're 5, right? You don't really understand what that totally means. And then you gradually start understanding it more and more as you get older. And so it doesn't impact you that much. If she had told him when he was younger, and then he heard these voices saying things that he believed, like Vader believed, like all this dark side stuff, and you can be more powerful and all this stuff, then that wouldn't have even impacted him. So the whole thing is predicated on the fact that Leia just decided, we're not going to tell this kid And then he's a grown man. You still haven't told him. We're gonna wait till he's older, and then he's 23, and you still haven't told him. And she wore the pants in the family. Clearly, Han had no say, I guess, or he agreed, I guess, with that. Okay, so it's like the whole thing's predicated on Leia being an idiot. But they're all idiots. But she's the main idiot. Oh, that's nice. Anyways, guys, let me know in the comment section what you think. This is so stupid. Disney sucks. It's just so dumb. So I don't want to Ben Solo's not a compelling character. It's a convoluted mess based on ruining all the OT characters. That's his entire story. I don't want him anymore. And I don't think a lot of people that even those people, like, remember that video where people are screaming in the theater when Rey takes the Skywalker name and they're like, where's Ben? Why did Ben have to die? It's like, I agree. It was stupid. The whole thing is ridiculous. Good. I'm glad he's dead. Get him out of there. This is so stupid. He just represents the destruction of my favorite characters in Star Wars. So why do I even want it? I don't want anything about him ever again. Well, I don't want any of this ever again. I don't want Rey either, but I don't want him. I almost don't want him more than I don't want Rey. Now that I know all this stuff. Let me know in the comment section what you think. If you like this content, please like, subscribe. It always helps the channel. Feel free to check anything else on my channel. Have yourselves a really good day.